Welcome to today's deep dive.
Ah, excellent.
We're going all the way back to ancient Greece
Oh, wow.
to grapple with the political philosophy of Aristotle.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of different material,
Right.
treatises, historical analyses, even some of his work on poetry. And we're going to try to figure out what Aristotle
Yeah.
considered to be the best possible society,
Okay.
and, of course, the role of the individual within it.
Fascinating stuff. It really is. A lot of what we consider politics today has roots in these ideas.
Absolutely. And he wasn't just a theorist. He was very interested in the actual workings of government,
Right.
particularly in his own city, Athens.
Mm.
He wanted to know how to create a system where people could really flourish.
Yes.
And that's where this concept of eudaimonia comes in.
Exactly. Now, we often translate eudaimonia as happiness, but it's a bit more profound than just feeling good. It's about living a fulfilling life, reaching your full potential as a human being. And for Aristotle, that wasn't just an individual pursuit, it was deeply intertwined with the structure of the state itself.
So it's not about retiring to a beach after winning the lottery,
Right.
but it's more about being the best version of yourself
Right.
within a society that supports that growth.
Yes.
Which brings us to the polis, the Greek city-state.
Right.
Why was that so central to his thinking?
Well, the polis, for Aristotle, wasn't just a place to live. It was a community, a partnership,
So?
designed to help individuals achieve this collective good life. He saw it as the ideal environment for cultivating virtue, participating in public life, and ultimately achieving eudaimonia.
It makes sense. So if the polis is so important,
Yes.
what kind of government did Aristotle think was the best to serve this purpose?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. He didn't just say democracy is the best or everyone needs a king.
Right.
He analyzed different forms of government, monarchy, aristocracy, polity, and their less ideal counterparts, tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy.
So he was like a proto-political scientist.
Yes, weighing the pros and cons of each system.
What was his conclusion?
Well, he was wary of extremes. He saw dangers in rule by a single tyrant, just as he saw problems in the potential chaos of an unchecked democracy. What fascinated him was this idea of a mixed government, one that blended elements of different systems.
Why a mixed system? What was so appealing about that?
He believed that by combining different elements, you could balance competing interests and prevent any one group from becoming too powerful. He pointed to this idea of checks and balances, ensuring that no single individual or faction could dominate the political landscape.
It sounded like he was really going for a system that was both stable and fair.
Exactly.
But in this ideal society, who gets to be a citizen and enjoy all these perks of the good life?
Ah, yes. This is where we start to see some of the limitations of Aristotle's vision.
Okay.
For him, citizenship was reserved for free adult males. Women, slaves, and foreigners were largely excluded from political participation.
Wow.
They couldn't vote, hold office, or even own property in some cases.
That's a crucial point.
Yes.
It really highlights how even brilliant minds are shaped by their historical context. So Aristotle, even though he had these groundbreaking ideas about government, he was still working within the social norms of ancient Greece.
Absolutely.
Which makes you wonder, how did the realities of Athenian life, its successes and its failures, influence his theories?
That's a great question. And Athenian history provides fascinating examples like the reforms of Solon, for instance, that may have directly shaped Aristotle's thinking about ideal governance.
Okay, this Solon character sounds intriguing.
He does.
And I'm also curious about something else. We mentioned Aristotle's work on poetry earlier.
Yeah.
How does that connect to his political thought?
Well, it might seem like a leap, but his analysis of tragedy in the Poetics actually offers some profound insights into his understanding of human nature and the challenges of achieving the good life, even within a well-structured society.
Hold on.
Yes.
You're saying there's a link between ancient Greek plays and how Aristotle thought about politics.
Oh, absolutely.
Color me intrigued.
Yes. There's a deeper connection than you might think. Remember, Aristotle believed that achieving eudaimonia was the ultimate goal, both for the individual and the polis. But in his analysis of tragedy, you see this awareness of the obstacles and complexities in that pursuit.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more about this Solon guy and how Athenian history played into all this.
All right, so imagine Athens a century before Aristotle. The city's facing some serious social and political turmoil, a lot of inequality. And this is where Solon enters the picture. He was a statesman and a lawgiver. He was tasked with reforming Athenian society, and what he did was quite remarkable. He introduced measures to alleviate debt, restructure political representation based on wealth. He basically tried to rebalance power to prevent further unrest.
So Solon was dealing with real-world problems,
Yes.
trying to find practical solutions
Yes.
to create a more stable and just society.
Exactly.
It sounds like he was grappling with that same tension
Uh-huh.
between stability and fairness
Yes.
that Aristotle was also fascinated by.
Precisely. And it's highly likely that Aristotle saw Solon's reforms as a model for how to prevent a society from tearing itself apart. Those reforms embodied the kind of mixed government approach that Aristotle was advocating for, where different elements of society have a voice, but no single group can become too dominant.
That makes a lot of sense. But how does tragedy fit into all of this? I'm still struggling with that connection.
Well, think about the great Greek tragedies, like Oedipus Rex, Antigone.
Okay.
These plays often depict characters striving for these noble goals, but ultimately being brought down by their own flaws, or by circumstances beyond their control.
You mean like Oedipus, who was a good king,
Yeah.
but made terrible choices based on incomplete information? Or Antigone, who was torn between obeying the law and honoring her family?
Exactly. Aristotle saw in these tragedies a reflection of the human condition.
Mm.
We strive for the good life, for eudaimonia, but we're fallible creatures, prone to error and subject to fate.
So even in a well-structured society,
Yes.
things can go wrong. Human nature itself can throw a wrench in the works.
Precisely. And this is where the link between tragedy and politics becomes even more profound.
Okay.
Aristotle saw Athenian democracy as having great potential, but also as being inherently vulnerable to these human flaws. The passions of the masses, if left unchecked, could lead to bad decisions, destabilizing the entire system.
So Athenian democracy itself could be seen as kind of a tragic hero, full of promise,
Yeah.
but also containing the seeds of its own downfall.
That's a brilliant insight. And it highlights the importance of what Aristotle called civic virtue.
Yeah, okay.
The idea that citizens needed to be educated, capable of reasoning well, and guided by wise leadership.
So for Aristotle, it wasn't enough to just have the right system in place.
Right.
The people themselves had to be active participants,
Absolutely.
cultivating the qualities of good citizens
Yes.
in order for that system to truly flourish.
Exactly. And this is where education comes in. Aristotle believed that citizens needed to be trained in virtue, to understand the common good, and to make informed judgments about matters of public importance. Without that foundation, even the most carefully crafted political system could just crumble.
That sounds like a pretty demanding vision of citizenship, not just about voting every few years, but about this ongoing engagement and a commitment to the well-being of the whole community.
Yes, and this is where we see the link back to eudaimonia. For Aristotle, true fulfillment wasn't just about individual happiness, but about contributing to the shared success of the polis. Understand that individual flourishing is intertwined with the well-being of the whole.
That's powerful stuff. But it also makes me wonder how much of Aristotle's thinking was based on practical advice. For rulers, for lawmakers, did he offer any concrete solutions to the challenges of governing?
That's where things get even more interesting. Aristotle wasn't a utopian thinker who believed in one-size-fits-all solutions. He understood that the best form of government might vary, depending on the specific circumstances of a society. The size of the population, cultural values, even geography could all play a role.
So he wasn't just a philosopher in an ivory tower. He was trying to deal with the nitty-gritty of real-world governance. What kind of practical advice did he offer?
Well, he emphasized the importance of maintaining a strong military, of course, but he also stressed promoting economic prosperity and upholding the rule of law. He believed that laws needed to be perceived as just and fair in order to command the respect and obedience of the citizens.
That sounds like some pretty timeless principles of good governance. Did he get into any specifics about how to achieve these things?
He did. He talked about the importance of having a system of checks and balances within government, preventing any one person or group from becoming too powerful. He argued that a diverse range of voices from different social classes and occupations should be represented in the decision-making process.
So he was concerned not just with the structure of government, but also with ensuring that it was responsive to the needs
Yes,
and the interests of the people it governed.
absolutely. Aristotle believed that a well-functioning state should serve the interests of all its citizens, not just the elite or the powerful. And while he didn't advocate for the kind of broad-based democracy we have today, he understood that a government that ignored the needs of its people would ultimately become unstable.
It's fascinating to see how many of these ideas still resonate with us today.
Yeah.
We may have moved beyond the direct democracy of ancient Athens, but we still grapple with those fundamental questions. How to create a system that's both fair and effective, how to balance individual rights with the common good, how to ensure that government truly serves the people.
And that's a testament to Aristotle's enduring influence. He may not have had all the answers, but he provided a framework for thinking about these issues, a framework that continues to shape political discourse even centuries later.
Before we get too carried away praising Aristotle, we do need to acknowledge the limitations of his thinking. His ideas about citizenship were deeply flawed, especially his views on women and slavery.
That's an important point. We can admire his brilliance while also recognizing that he was a product of his time and place, and it's our responsibility to critically examine his ideas and adapt them to the complexities of our own era.
Well said. Before we wrap up, I'm curious about one more thing. Aristotle's ideas about the ideal state were obviously shaped by his experience in ancient Greece. But how have his ideas been interpreted and reinterpreted throughout history, across different cultures, different time periods?
That's a great question, and it speaks to the truly remarkable legacy of Aristotle. His works have traveled across time and space, sparking debates, inspiring thinkers, from the Middle Ages to the Enlightenment and beyond. And each era has grappled with his ideas in its own unique way.
So we're talking about Aristotle's ideas spreading, like philosophical wildfire, influencing thinkers across centuries. Where did his ideas travel to, and how are they received in different contexts?
Well, imagine this. His work makes its way to the Islamic world. During the Middle Ages,
Okay.
scholars there are rediscovering these ancient Greek texts,
Huh.
including Aristotle, and they're incorporating these ideas into their own philosophical and theological systems.
So Aristotle's influence wasn't limited to the West.
No, not at all.
It had a truly global impact.
Absolutely. And in the Islamic world, some thinkers were particularly drawn to his emphasis on reason and logic. They saw in Aristotle a framework for understanding God and the natural world. His work on metaphysics and logic became foundational to their own intellectual explorations.
That's fascinating. So not only was Aristotle shaping political thought,
Right.
but he was also influencing religious understanding
Yes,
in different parts of the world.
exactly. And then fast forward to the Renaissance and the Enlightenment in Europe.
Okay.
Thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, John Locke, they're revisiting Aristotle's ideas about natural law and individual rights,
Sure.
using them to develop new theories of government and social contract.
It's like Aristotle provided a set of intellectual tools
Yes.
that later thinkers could use
Right.
to build their own philosophical systems,
Exactly.
even if they didn't always agree with him on everything.
That's a great way to put it. It wasn't about blindly following Aristotle, but about engaging with his ideas, adapting them, sometimes even challenging them. That's what makes the study of philosophy so dynamic. It's this ongoing conversation across generations.
It's like we're all part of this giant intergenerational brainstorming session, with Aristotle as one of the key participants.
I love that image. And it highlights something crucial about Aristotle's legacy. He wasn't just trying to provide definitive answers. He was giving us the tools to ask the right questions. He gave us a framework for thinking about the ideal state, the good life, and the challenges of living together in a just and flourishing society.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Aristotle's world, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the key lesson here is this pursuit of the good life, both individually and collectively. It's not a passive activity. It requires active engagement, critical thinking, a willingness to learn from the past, while adapting to the challenges of the present.
It's a call to action. Be thoughtful citizens. Engage in these meaningful conversations about the kind of world we want to create, and never stop striving for a society
Oh, yeah.
where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential.
Beautifully said. Aristotle may not have given us all the answers, but he equipped us with the questions, and that's a far more valuable gift. He left us with a roadmap for this ongoing journey of building a better future.
On that inspiring note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Aristotle's enduring legacy. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep striving for the good life.